I was a hippie back in the 60s and early 70s. And yet I was born into an affluent family with a successful father, very successful businessman, very much a part of the status quo, the system, we used to call it back then. And we locked horns from time to time. And yet when I graduated from high school, I went to college. That's what we did. That's what I was expected to do. And 2 years in, I wasn't getting anything out of it. I just wasn't connected. I just wasn't enrolled. It wasn't speaking to me. I was more engaged with this idea of the counterculture movement and the change. This was the time of the Vietnam War, the anti-war movement, and the environmental movement, and those kind of things that were anti-system back then. And I felt like I was in the system in college. So I decided I was going to drop out after my sophomore year. And my parents weren't happy about it. And we kind of bumped heads about that. But I was determined, and so the day of my last exam, I walked to the local construction site and got a job. The next day I was working so I could have money to stay as opposed to having to go home. It was my own statement to my father and to me that this is not working, I'm going to do something different. And my parents didn't have a lot of choice around it. At least they gave me the freedom to experiment with this, but they weren't happy about it. About 2 months into this, my parents were in town. They lived in Miami, Florida at the time, and we were at my uncle's house, who lived in Raleigh. I'm in Chapel Hill, he lived in Raleigh. My uncle was the patriarch of the family. He's the one that ran the family business, so he was this well-established man in my family. And I was over there visiting with him and my parents, and he took me aside, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm working as a carpenter." And he said, "Well, the greatest man in the world was a carpenter. You'll be just fine." And that was enough reassurance for me to know that I was doing the right thing. Just a side comment. And so an uncle's love, saying, "Yes, you're okay, keep going." A year later, I was back in school, got an engineering degree, environmental business, but stopping is what allowed me to reassess and redirect and point myself in that direction. And my uncle gave me the freedom to do that by saying, "You're okay." And he said it in a way that my father couldn't. My father, I think, had felt like he had to hold on to this way of being. You have to do this. But my uncle, being the uncle, didn't have to. So the story or the suggestion I would have for young people in college is if you've got an urge to do something, go for it. Don't let the system tell you what to do. And it'll turn out just fine. Yeah. Certainly did in my case.